Hi there, everybody. Ryan Dawson in the house. Pretty much the guy that has done the most amount of work on the 9 work, and he has been banned from God knows how many platforms because he's been telling the truth about 9/11 and a dozen other things which are of great importance to the world in general. And there are people that are making money from taking his stuff, his information, his data, and converting it into their work. There's a guy that literally just copies whatever Ryan has done, and it's made money from it. So I'm going to just stop there and just let Ryan tell you a little bit about what he is and what he's done and the things that he's working on right now. And I just want to say that he is my go-to guy for information to do with 9/11, every other conspiracy that comes up with, JFK, call it what you will. He's done the research. He's got the receipts, and
JFK there and Epstein there,
right there. So literally all the things that matter to me as a person, that JFK was someone whose history I love, and he was destroyed. Jeffrey Epstein and 9/11. These are the three great conspiracies of our time. And Ryan has done so much work on those. So I'm going to let Ryan explain a little bit about.
You get some of this coffee. It tastes great. For some reason, this label makes it taste better.
And he is an absolute legend. I made a video on Twitter about thanking all the people that mattered, that did work, that were on the side of the people of Gaza, that were completely anti-genocide. And Ryan is in the list of like the 9-10 people that I've retweet everything he says or does, because it pretty much I am on the same wavelength as him. I'm going to shut up now. Ryan, please
I appreciate all that acknowledgement, and that,
go for it.
Unfortunately, people are going to plagiarize, especially when you're in alt media. You don't have any rights. And when you're banned on everything, it's very easy for someone who has a Twitter or Facebook or one of the mainstream things to just take what you say and run with it as their own. There's not much you can do about it. People pirate my films all the time. Right after Ian Carroll boosted Numex, somebody else uploaded it to their Rumble, and that was the first result, and got like 50,000 followers in a day. Great. You guys aren't helping by pirating my movies. Just retweet or post the original so that if someone wants to get hold of the actual creator, it's on my page and they can reach me, and then we can do interviews and things, whatever. But
can you please put some bit of information about that video, because that's the one
NUMEC, it's the Nuclear Material and Equipment Corporation is what the acronym stands for, and it's about the Israeli theft of highly enriched uranium from the United States and the cover-up. And it was part and parcel of a massive conventional weapons smuggling ring that the Israelis were getting guns and ammo out of the United States in preparation. Well, they weren't Israelis yet, like the Haganah, the people that became Israel after the Nakba. These terrorist groups were smuggling weapons. And the gist of it was World War II had just ended. And so there was a massive surplus of weapons for all the countries involved in the Second World War. And what do you do with them now? They were supposed to decommission them, but immediately you had this Soviet Union versus the United States, duality of superpowers. And instead of ending the black market's weapons trade, they both finessed it to allow it whenever it went to someone in their camp and not allow it when it didn't. And so it became CIA, and at the time the KGB, now the FSB, went into black market weapons management instead of prevention. Kind of like narcotics today. They allow the opium out of Afghanistan, for example, before that Vietnam and Laos. And anyway, this ring of, at the time, Jewish millionaires, which would now be billionaires, set up, centered around a man named Rudolf Sonborn, I would put as the middle, and then Menachem Begin and Ben Gurion over in Israel. They were part of this huge ring, and they got ballsy enough to steal highly enriched uranium, which they use in a illegal program to build nuclear bombs. The French had built them a plutonium reactor, and they smuggled in 97% highly enriched uranium from the United States, the only country that made that at the time, by the way. Yeah. And illegally built nuclear bombs. It's a very interesting story because Kennedy was after him for it. And then somebody shot him. And then LBJ comes in and gives us the USS Liberty. And the only policies Lyndon Johnson really changed from Kennedy were on the Middle East. He stayed in Vietnam. He had the same, anti-Cuba. All the stuff was the same except for that. And that was a big one. Both Jack and John wanted to inspect Dimona and knew what Israel had done. And in fact, Robert Kennedy did send people out to test the flora and fauna around Dimona and found the uranium. There was later a whistleblower, as you know, Mordecai Vanunu, who, he converted to Christianity and moved to Australia, but he took all these photographs of the warheads, the reactor, everything. And unfortunately, he had a partner from Colombia, sold it to the Sun in the UK when that's not what Mordecai wanted to do. And of course, that was owned by Robert Maxwell, which is the father of Glenn Maxwell, who paired up with Jeffrey Epstein. He was an asset for Israeli intelligence. He told on Vanunu, and they arrested him in Italy through a honey trap and threw him in solitary confinement for the next 11 years and regular prison for long after that. The first words out of his mouth when he got out of jail, though, was, "Michael Piper is correct about JFK." And I worked with Michael Piper. He's deceased now, rest in peace. But his theory was, yes, that the Kennedys both were killed for inspecting Israel's illegal nuclear weapons program. And not only were they not signed up for the Non-Proliferation Treaty and yet building nuclear weapons, they were stealing the material from the United States. If the world found that out, if America found out that Israel stole nuclear weapons from the United States, that would be the end of the Israeli state.
I'll ask you a question. Is there any chance you could do me a massive favor right now? Can you go and grab hold of your link for your Rumble, for the Rumble video for NUMEC, and put it on? You don't need to do it now, but the sooner it goes underneath this video, this tweet that's gone out there that I'm sure you've retweeted as well, so people can see it. And I want people to understand, he has done a meticulous piece of work. Literally every single person's name that's involved with their picture. Ryan has got the jigsaw, and it is a huge jigsaw of 50 people that I've watched it, and there's like 50, 60 people that were involved, and he has got all of them meticulously put on this drawing, and it's there. So it's not like making it up. This is, and the fact that it's true,
it's
because
9 minutes of credits and footnotes of sources at the end. I sent you where it's on Twitter. So since you're, Twitter doesn't like external links, so NUMEC is also on Twitter, and I put that on your Telegram, so you can put that on yours.
Yeah, and what I'm saying is that people need to understand that this is not some conspiracy theorist situation. This is an actual, everything is
classified documents in 2011 and 2015 showing that Hayden and others had gone and tested the flora and fauna around Dimona and found 97% enriched uranium that only existed in the Nautilus program for U.S. nuclear submarines. Salman Shapiro, hardcore Zionist, was the kind of founding father of that program. They were producing highly enriched uranium out of Apollo, Pennsylvania. Tons of this went missing. They got them dead to rights. I mean, in one incident, it fell out in the docks at Red Hook. It was being run by Anastasia and Meyer Lansky mafia syndicate. It takes a while to go through the whole story. It's fascinating bit of history that no one seems to know. The classic JFK conspiracies are, I'll tell you the least dumb ones first is, Oliver Stone pushes, well, the CIA did it because he didn't give air support to the Bay of Pigs. Not true. There was air support. They didn't have ground support. The anti-Castro Cubans they claimed to have didn't have the arms they had because it had been diverted to Israel through people like Santos Trafficante, mob boss in Cuba that just ends up moving to Tampa and running that with the Marcello brothers. They had to syndicate Louisiana. In fact, Jack Ruby's girls that he would use for his carousel club came from this Miami, Tampa Bay, New Orleans, Dallas, like the same route. They would exchange girls back and forth for the clubs, and that was all under mob rule with Carlos Marcello and Santos Trafficante. But anyway, wasn't the Bay of Pigs thing. There's another one to say, well, he was about to get out of Vietnam. That's not true. Kennedy, unfortunately, started Vietnam. Him and McNamara went around procuring multi-million-dollar contracts for new fighter jets, and they were all excited about it. That wasn't it. It was Israel. And all the other stuff, blaming his wife or the driver, that's just beyond dumb. That's like the airplane deniers of 9/11. No, it was, look, he gave him an ultimatum. And Ben Gurion even resigned in October to create a moratorium. Like, the prime minister of Israel resigned over the nuclear weapons inspections. And less than a month later, somebody shot Kennedy.
Let me ask you a question now. You know
Somebody
that Donald
shot him
Trump,
from behind and made the brain go out the back of his head. I mean,
yeah,
come on.
and the shooters behind it. Now, you know as well as I do that Donald Trump promised that he's going to release the JFK files, RFK, Martin Luther King. In the release of the JFK papers, at least, yeah? In your opinion, what are the kind of things that are going to be in there that you have not already looked at? What's the kind of stuff that's going to add value to the reason for him to do that?
The only thing that's going to add value is it's going to make people look at it again. Everyone needs to understand this. 99% of all the files on JFK have already been released. If you think the super secret nugget is in that last 1%, I'm telling you, we already know what happened and who killed both of the Kennedys without releasing those files. There is enough information from those files, from the Warren Commission, from just regular research and doing, the detective work you should do. You can figure out what happened. But what they do with these files is it's just like the Epstein list. I've released the Epstein list years ago. I even put it on a t-shirt. It doesn't matter because people are acting like no one got arrested, no one got in trouble, which is not true. I mean, obviously Epstein got arrested, Maxwell got arrested, Jean-Luc Brunel got arrested, and you had people like Leon Black and Deutsche Bank and JP Morgan paying out tens of millions of dollars in settlements and hush money. Jess Staley got nabbed. Like, a lot of people on that list did get sued. Prince Andrew, 16 million, or went to jail, or mysteriously had an accident. That's just bullshit to say no one on the list got in trouble. And it's bullshit to pretend like we don't know who's on the list. We have the list. Here's the list. You want to know how you get the client list? You go through the court documents and you find out who the clients were. Their victims will tell you that Glenn Dubin was raping Virginia Giuffre. They will tell you about Leon Black. They will tell you about Reid Hoffman. They'll go down, and I've sat there and read it. I wish I had it in arm's length, but the problem is the public wants some authority. They want it to be on CNN or Tucker Carlson to have a folder. Like, here's the list, as if he kept the names of all his Johns on a piece of paper somewhere and locked it in a safe. That would be so stupid. He's got a black book. He knows which contacts, partake in that and which ones don't. He did not compile it all in one place and leave it in a safety deposit box for you. You compile the list by going through all the court documents, by listening to the witnesses. You listen to the victims. You listen to people who work for him, his own employees, his pilots, his chefs, his chauffeur, his bodyguards. They've all given statements. And you can grab all these names. There's at least 77 names. I think I put out the first page, first 50 or so, and that map of how they relate to each other. And it doesn't matter because they're like, I wish we had the client list, because they need somebody on TV to tell them the same thing I'm telling them. And it's the same thing with Kennedy or 9/11 or any of these things. It does. I can tell you who's on the grassy knoll. I can tell you who shot Robert. I'll tell you right now, Thane Eugene Caesar shot Robert in the back of the head. They don't know who that is, and it's not a fancy celebrity name. So they're like, well, let's think of the woman in the polka dot dress and MK Ultra and some convoluted crap, that they need, because they're used to the, ancient aliens from the History Channel or whatever. Everything has to be Hollywood, and it just isn't. Most of the people on the Epstein client list are not really fascinating names. It's just boring hedge fund managers and bankers and things people who are very important, very wealthy, most of whom you wouldn't know who they were. It is not like sexy names like Tom Hanks or something. He's not on the list. It's the same thing with the perpetrators of killing the Kennedys. It's a bunch of low-level, expendable mafia skunk. What really matters is who hired him to do the job, and that's the Israelis. And it's not like you have to invent things for Israel to be guilty of horrendous crimes. And what they're doing today in the West Bank and Gaza is enough. They're committing genocide in front of the world. So you don't really have to add, yeah, guess what? They killed both Kennedys too. But yeah, they did. And they celebrated 9/11, and they had foreknowledge of that. And they attacked the USS Liberty and the King David Hotel, and an embassy in Rome. And they're just a series of terrorist attacks. The letter bombs in Egypt, the Lavon affair, which should be called Operation Susanna, because Pinhas Lavon was actually a fall guy. Benjamin McGilley was the one that set the whole thing up. But they sold contraband during Iran-Contra. They were partners then too. It never ends. They, of course, helped topple Syria and finance Salafist jihadi cannon fodder in that conflict. Israel is always engaged in criminality. Routinely spies on the United States. AIPAC and the ADL too. They do character assassinations. SPLC, same thing. They spied on Trump with stingrays in 2017. There's that Philip Nozet scandal. Jonathan Pollard, who sold the Soviets their first strike plans, did enormous damage to the United States. He was a spy for Israel. They let him out.
Yeah.
So it's not like you can't point to modern things. You don't have to go back as far as 9/11, or certainly not as far back as killing JFK, but it really starts with JFK. If he had lived, we wouldn't have an AIPAC, because that's another thing he was doing, is registering the Zionist American Council as a foreign agent under the FARA. There wouldn't be, and without AIPAC, none of this happens. There's no 9/11, there's no Iraq War, there's no Syrian War, there's no invasion of Libya. All these wars disappear. With no sanctions on Iran, none of this. We'd have peace in the Middle East. But when LBJ got in, who's raised, is a founder of the ADL and Operation Magic Carpet out of Yemen, it's disgusting. The relationship that the U.S. and Israel have had ever since the Great Compromising. And I'll tell you who was the Epstein back then in the 60s is Bobby Baker. People, I'm gonna run out of air, but look him up. Bobby Baker and all the adulterous scandals that involved, and it all went away when LBJ became president. They had no interest in looking at it.
It just seems like it's a never-ending cycle that they have of operations and intelligence projects that they do.
Because they never get popped, right? Imagine, I think that the TikTokers kind of know, because that's the only place you can put this stuff, really. The big operation in the 80s were Operation Eagle Claw, which everyone calls Iran-Contra, which is fine.
What's it called?
Eagle Claw.
Eagle Claw.
Yeah,
okay.
That was the Iran-Contra affair. And then you had Operation Cyclone, which is financing Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan to fight the Soviets. Then we have Timber Sycamore, which is financing Al-Qaeda in Syria. The Contras were publicly condemned and privately supported under the Reagan-Bush administration. And they did a very similar thing where basically after Watergate and the end of Vietnam, they didn't have the narcotics out of Vietnam, Laos to pay for their black budget anymore. They lost that. That was gone when the war ended. Getting popped for Watergate was a double whammy, because Colby and them, they did a lot of house cleaning in the CIA, and there was a lot of domestic scrutiny. So what does Bush do? George Bush Sr. was the director of the CIA in 1976. He moves it out, and they start with his business partners in Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. And so they have offshore money to money launder offshore institutions like BCCI, where now they can pay for their black budgets without the domestic scrutiny. And that partnership between the U.S. and the Saudis, when they brought them in, really they were just joining a pre-existing nexus of the U.S. and Israel, because that had been going on. And the whole reason they had to pop this oil cartel that OPEC had formed in a reaction to Yom Kippur of 1973, the same year as Watergate. The U.S. is supporting Israel, assaulting all their neighbors. And as a reaction to the U.S. support for Israel, the OPEC nations did an oil embargo. Well, of the OPEC nations, who has the largest oil reserves? Saudi Arabia. So how do you break the cartel? You send in Bechtel, you send in all the American companies and corporations to modernize Saudi Arabia. In exchange, they're going to overproduce on oil, which hurts the Soviets and breaks the cartel. So they brought them into the intelligence nexus, and they needed an offshore way to launder money. So the CIA straight up took tens of millions of dollars and just moved them across the ocean. And the shenanigans never stopped, because that's 76. They roll right into Iran-Contra by 1980, 81, and they're in there with the Afghan war as well in the 80s. And of course, Iran and Iraq fight for 9 years. They had a hand in arming both sides there. So if any of these operations where you have multiple nations secretly financing terrorist groups, and I would call the Contras a terrorist group too, not just the Al-Qaeda Mujahideen, then there wouldn't have been a 9/11, because it's the same thing. The CIA they had a hand in glove relationship with Al-Qaeda, and they absolutely knew that 9/11 hijackers had U.S. visas, had entered the U.S., knew where they were, knew they were going to flight schools, knew they had a plan to ram planes into buildings, because they had already caught that in 1995 with Ramzi Youssef and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who attacked in 93. Remember, the World Trade Center was hit by a Ryder truck bomb in 1993. They had the Bajinka plot. There's just no question. George Tenet knew. I don't want to go off for too long on this. Empire and Mass, I went over it. They followed Nawif al-Hazmi and Khaled al-Midhar to an Al-Qaeda summit meeting in Malaysia. En route, Midhar stopped in Dubai, and they snuck in his hotel room and copied his passport. They knew he had a U.S. visa. They knew he was going to enter. They were fast-tracked from Jeddah out of Saudi Arabia on the fast-track program, which never should have been allowed. But the CIA was running these guys. People can be like, oh, they thought they flipped them and they got triple crossed or whatever. Like, no. It is on purpose. There's too many screw ups. There's no way. If it was mistaken, then why are they hiding information from the FBI and NSA? They did it. They celebrated it afterward. I remember Sibel Edmonds got hold of a recording of that, because she was a translator at the Washington field office for the FBI, September 12th. Congratulating each other, mission accomplished. Mike Fageli worked at that DC office. He squashed information from whistleblowers. Very specific. And French intelligence too. They had their names even, and it all got ignored. That is not incompetence. It's on purpose. The problem is, when you talk about 9/11, you get people with the nanothermite and the airplane denial and all the Alex Jones, whatever, with missiles hitting building, just fantastical nonsense, so that it becomes a tar baby for anybody, with triple digit IQ is just going to roll their eyes at that crap. There was a lot, man. There was a cell in the World Trade Centers that sabotaged the fire prevention equipment, which ensured maximum damage from fire. And they caught them, and they went to jail. And 90% of people don't know that story.
Really?
Because Alex Jones doesn't talk about it. So we're like, yes, they had a team. Khalid al-Dala, Sakira Hamad. There was 2 Hamads because they were cousins. There's a group, 6 men, busted in Tennessee. This is a side thing, but this is getting these fake driver's license stuff for moving Aero trucks, which were the kind of trucks they used in the truck bombs. Because you didn't need a social security number in Tennessee back in 2001. They had an employee at the DMV, which is the Department of Motor Vehicles for Foreigners, Catherine Smith, that were issuing out these IDs. There was a sting. Serendipitously, they caught people in the parking lot of the DMV, and one of them had on his person a pass to do work in the World Trade Center dated September 5th. So less than a week before 9/11. And they said, well, who was this for? Because the Port Authority controls the World Trade Center.
Right.
And unless a tenant had hired them, they're not allowed to do work on fire prevention systems that go throughout the whole building. And you don't have to sit there and tinker with every floor. You just sabotage the 3 relay pumps and it's done. And if you don't have water, then you guarantee fire will do what fire does. So they got busted and they couldn't explain it. The company they worked for, this Denko Mechanical, was just some residential address of somebody in New York. It wasn't a real business. David Connell, Sergey Denko. It was fake. They had fraudulently created reference letters for fire prevention credentials that didn't exist. It wasn't like they forged it. They just wholesale made them up. Nobody gave them these, but they got them. And these men were allowed to do something inside the World Trade Center. And then obviously they didn't really upgrade internet cables or elevators or sprinkler systems. They broke sprinkler systems and went to prison. And here's the kicker. The ringleader gets a $250,000 bail and goes to Israel.
Let me stop and ask you a small question. Those people, how would they know where everything is? Someone's told them how to stop this system, fire system, suppression system working. Who would be the people that would teach them those things? They must have a contact somewhere in the building or drawings. Or is it as simple as, or is it easy to be able to stop things like that? Or do you think they actually had help with that as well?
I think it's more than 6 people. That's just who got caught. That's just who was there, during that sting, and they got fried. But there was a larger team. One of them had driven an Aero truck from Ground Zero to Tennessee on 9/11. What's Aero trucks is just sort of a generic truck that you can slap a logo on. So, for example, a moving company could put their logo, like White Glove Movers or Urban Moving Systems, for example, could do that. And it's odd because there was moving companies that were using Aero trucks, and these same people were drivers and stuff. And it was a series of Israeli cells. And one of the owners of one of the urban moving systems in New Jersey, his name is Dominic Suter, wife named Ornette Livingston, got a $500,000 loan only 1 year and never again. He closed shop on 9/11 and all his employees left. Fabulously, they had tickets to go to countries overseas, India, Australia, Germany, because, minimum wage furniture movers often do. They had thousands of dollars on their person, like just stuffed in a sock, and 16 computer hard drives, which is way more than you need to move furniture, confiscated by the Joint Terrorist Task Force, and they never have had access to what was on those. But he fled to Israel, and some of his underlings, they were arrested and jailed for 71 days, and then Chertoff had them released, and they fled to Israel. But it's very interesting because all 5 of those guys had different timelines about what had happened on 9/11. And I did a FOIA and I got their interrogations and compared them. And, I've done all this. And everybody remembers what they were doing on 9/11, where they were when they heard the news, but not these guys. They all lied. 3 of the 5 were seen celebrating the attacks, flicking lighters and high-fiving and hugging each other. And then they went back to urban moving systems and climbed up on the roof and did some more celebrating, took some more pictures with some more people. And before they got arrested, when they were witnessed, the witness, her name was Maria Septimrelli. So I think that's Italian for September. What a weird thing, But anyway, she waited for her husband to come home before she called the police. They put out a bolo, be on the lookout. And these guys got pulled over later in the evening, but they had visited another moving company system called White Glove Movers, and they were on their way back from that when they got popped. And we know which gas station they were at. We have a whole paper trail of where they were and what they did. And we have the photographs they took too, which prove that they were there before or as the first plane hit. And we have witnesses that saw their van there prior to the first plane hitting. So what a coincidence. You're just parked at a parking spot on a ledge that oversees perfectly, the line where the towers used to be. And then after the plane hits, you get out and get on the roof and start high-fiving each other and flicking lighters and celebrating. It was awesome that a commercial airliner just ran into a building. What kind of psychopath celebrates that? They knew exactly what it was, and they hung around until another plane hit because they knew that was coming.
Yeah, exactly right.
Very interesting line from one of them. His name was Omar Mamari, and he said, Blank said, "Bring your camera, quick, come up to the roof. They're about to take down the second building." What does that mean? Who is they, and how do you know when it's about to fall? And he was the only truthful one. He broke down crying and stuff because this guy wasn't like the other 4. He'd only been at Urban Moving Systems a couple weeks. He was in their secondary business of just making boxes and things. They just gave him a job because he's Israeli. The rest of them, they all lied. Sivan and Paul Kursberg, they were brothers, and Paul admitted that they had been sent to New York by the Jewish agency. They forgot to white out a footnote. They whited it out, but they didn't white out the footnote. I don't know if they forgot or some pissed off employee did it on purpose, hoping some snoop like me would find it, and I did. So now everybody knows. But they weren't just there moving furniture. Nah, those were front companies. They were monitoring the hijackers. And it's a really great front because as a moving van, you can be anywhere and everyone just assumes somebody's moving somewhere. It's really good. They actually gave, not them, but Classic International Movers, which is another one of these in the ring. The Miami field office contacted the Newark, not New York, Newark, New Jersey office to tell them that one of the 9/11 hijackers was being moved around by Classic International Movers. They took them to New York. Then they live right next door. I mean, come on. What they were doing is they were protecting them from local authorities.
Do you think there's a crossover between what the CIA and Mossad or the intelligence services from Israel are working together? Because, I mean, you know as well as I do, the consequence of 9/11 was that it started the new era of American hegemony. You know, they give the military industrial complex and its hawks the excuse they needed to go to Iraq. They gave them the excuse they needed to go to Afghanistan. So, you know, Israel definitely benefited. You know, Jeffrey Sachs has made a comment which Donald Trump retweeted saying that Benjamin Netanyahu has been taking us into war since 1996 when he first became prime minister, when he was in the Senate saying, yeah, I promise you, if you take Iraq out, everything will be fine.
What Sachs said was the thesis of my 9/11 movie. Like the script for war, he gave the same examples of General Clark, Wesley Clark getting up there and saying, are we still going to Iraq? And what I would point out too is when he's talking about that, this is 10 days after 9/11. September 21st, he finds out they've already decided to go to war with Iraq. This is before there's even any BS about WMDs. They're just like, we're going to war with Iraq, find some way to sell it to the public. Then he goes in October, which is only about a month after 9/11, and he's like, oh, it's gotten worse. There's 5 more countries they want to invade, or 7 in 5 years. And they did. They did Libya, and they did Syria, and they did Iraq. And then they split Sudan, and then both of the Sudans have civil wars right now. Somalia was toppled. It's just, in Lebanon, you know, Israel attacked them twice, 2006, and then last year. Lost both times. But with the fall of Syria, they did, the Lebanon, it wasn't just Hezbollah. Lebanon and Hezbollah fought them in 2006. This time, yeah, they lost, but they've cut off the land corridor to Hezbollah by toppling Syria with Turkey's HTS. Let's not call them that. It's Al Nusra Front. Let's not call them that. It's Al Qaeda. I won't even call it the Islamic State because it's not really a state. It's not really Islamic. It's just Al Qaeda. Yeah, that list. But Jeffrey Sachs is correct, and that is what I was saying till I was blue in the face. Is that Netanyahu has planned this script. He can go back to the papers prepared to him from the clean break, but you can go back before that to Oded Yanan, which spells it all out. Every Arab on Arab conflict is beneficial to Israel in the short run. Da, 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 da. They spelled out the script for war. And then in the Project for a New American Century, published on PNAC, financed by Lockheed Martin, you talked about the MIC, financed by Lockheed Martin, they say they need a new Pearl Harbor. They need a new catalyst to justify all these wars. They'd already planned what they wanted. And you have to stress this. This is not in American national interest. It's in Israeli national interest.
Yes. Yes.
They didn't benefit from war in Iraq. They don't benefit from a war in Syria or Libya. It's a headache. They don't benefit from sanctioning Iran. They could buy oil and gas from all these places. Everybody wins. No, they decided to join the child murdering psychopaths where God's a real estate agent and they can just move into someone's living room. That's their team. And because of bribery and blackmail and them stealing the bomb and killing JFK and weaseling their way in, like I was explaining earlier, we have been following Israeli policy for the last 35 years. And it's not getting better.
Not for America and not for the world, but it's okay for Israel.
Yeah. Sort of. It's okay for like the fanatics of Israel in the long run. I don't think it's good for Israel. The whole
Yeah.
world hates them, and rightly so. I mean, when you got a population of people, the majority want to completely ethnically cleanse Palestinians. I don't want to hear any more whining about the Holocaust or Nazis when you are the modern day Nazis and you are committing the modern day Holocaust.
I 100% agree with everything you've just, I mean, I agree with everything you've ever said anyway, because we're pretty much, I've learnt a lot from you, and on where I was missing certain things, I always, I listen, and then for me, I've got a critical way of thinking, and everything you've said to me makes sense. It's just so we're clear that Ryan came over here to London once, and I invited him to come and stay at my house, and he's a good friend of mine, and he's a good pal of mine, and he's
I
opened
was
my
doing
eyes up.
Earl Davis show and Sean Atwood, so one in London and one near Bath.
Yeah.
And I stayed with you, which saved me money and time, and we had some good steak. So it's good stuff.
The
But
steak was good.
yeah, hard to get good food in London. Some call it an oxymoron, but it's a stereotype. It's not as bad as people make it out to be. But the fact that the most like world-renowned chef is probably Gordon Ramsay, who's British, proves we're in a simulation.
Anyway, I need to talk to you about the main reason I actually asked you to come on the show was I want to talk to you about Donald Trump. Donald Trump is someone. So
Hey,
let
we'll
me
talk
just.
Trump, but just so you know, another billionaire pedophile has been popped. This one out of Quebec, Robert Miller, and I got all the goods on his case. But this is what's fascinating. I don't know if you heard about this or not, but most people
Hold on.
didn't.
Is Robert Miller the guy that was funding Brexit over here?
I
Him
doubt
and
it.
his daughter were the ones paying for Brexit?
He would never do anything above board. He's an alias called Bob Adams, and he's real reclusive. There might be another biller, but Robert Miller was a richest man in Quebec for a while. He owns Future Technology. He's an old man now. He's like 80, 81, but for 30 years, he was raping high school and even middle school kids in hotels. It's nasty. And he had, similar to Peter Nygard, and a little bit like Epstein, he would turn some of the girls, flip them into becoming recruiters and pay them more if they would bring him other girls. He had intermediaries that would, bring them to the hotels. He ended up buying houses because the hotel staff was like, well, why are you always these women up in this room? So yeah, it went on and on. And, it's unfortunately he got away with a whole lifetime of doing this, but some of his cohorts, in the middle of their life, so maybe they'll get popped. People like Raymond Poulet and Raymond Poulet is what we call him. But these people deservingly are getting scrutiny now and some prison time. But it's odd to me that you have a multi-billionaire pedophile with a network that raped hundreds of girls, and he's totally caught, assets frozen, arrested, barely any news. But just accusing Andrew and Tristan Tate was all over the fucking news, and they're not even guilty. And there is no pedophile or any of that stuff, and definitely not for 30 years. Then they start when they're 6 years old? Like, no, this guy had decades of this, and there's bribery to the police. It's an interesting story. It should be an Epstein level, like massive media, but I swear, like they finalized the arrest just as Trump was getting inaugurated, knowing damn well that would bump everything out of the news because everyone's going to be focused on Trump and his executive order, which is a huge story, and they should pay attention to that. But any other day, you could have done this. But as it was happening, like last May, there was a big movement, and they froze his assets in December. It wasn't news. It wasn't news. And I'm like, how do I get people to care about this? And you can't. Like, if you don't have, YouTube and Meta, Instagram, and all that stuff, you really don't have reach. And that is the problem with this techopoly, which you saw in the front row of Trump. You saw Google, you saw X, you saw Meta with Zuckerberg, you saw Amazon, and you saw TikTok. Just here's your techocracy. And what these people are doing is different than the using the government to corner markets for goods and services like the old crony capitalist model. Now what they do is they don't control the market, they control the access to the market. They are the medium that if you're going to get a book or a film or news or daily current events, you've got to go through social media, realistically. And so they control the access to the markets. It's a new form of cronyism, and they're all there. They're the front row. And then the politicians are behind the donor class.
Correct.
And that's the genius thing that Trump's doing with TikTok. He's given them this 90 days. They were banned for like a day, and he brought them back, and he's given them 90 days to make a decision, give us policing control or else.
Yes.
But what he's also doing is you see Zuckerberg and Elon and Bezos and all these people come kiss the ring, because controlling that algorithm is tantamount to you get to control what people see and hear. So in a way, you control how they think. You get all their data and metadata, so you can farm them psychologically into doing what you want, getting them addicted to this and that. You decide what they see, and they're figuring out how, like never before, to hone in and control people, because they know these weird corollaries. Well, if they like this, they'll do this. Say this to this person. Say that to this. This is what works. They figure it out. TikTok comes in like stone cold with the glass breaking, has a different algorithm, and is not part of the social engineering, or it's got a different one, and it wrecks it all. That's why you see all these Gen Z people talking about Bin Laden's letter to America, which has been out for 20 years, but they just saw it, last year. So because of TikTok. And things like, the rape cases in the UK, which is, from 2013 at least, brand new, because Elon started talking about it. But yeah, TikTok talked about Gaza. They gave Israel a new hole. They raped him with a cactus. Like, that's what that cactus symbol is for, by the way. And rightly so. Fuck Israel. I mean, they've already broken the ceasefire. Snipers shooting kids, murdering nurses. They're doing what they do. That's why there was an Ox 7. And on TikTok, they're like, look at all these burned cars. This is the Hannibal Directive. I don't want to say kids, but I mean, they're kind of, but only 20-year-old young adults that have access to this stuff. And it only takes a few people, probably the people you listed, like a Norman Finkelstein, an Aaron Mate and Max Blumenthal, Gideon Livy, or, these great names have been fighting for Palestine 30, 40 years in some cases, an Elon Pape or someone like that. Or, the generation after that, maybe Max and I are in the same generation, whatever. But like, get the point. We have amassed, like, chronologued all these Israeli crimes. And I go a step further, because I went into 9/11 to JFK to the theft of nuclear weapons, how the beginnings from like a little bit more than just Palestine, Syria, Iraq, which is fine. That's a crime and enough by itself. But they, through TikTok, are just gobbling up this information. They're talking about the USS Liberty. They're talking about Levant. They're talking about the Nakba. They're talking about Cast Lead, Pillar of God, all these different operations, flooding Alaska, all that stuff they know. Okay, they've always been able to know if they had access to information, which they did not have with Discord and Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. They would, because I'm not allowed to talk. People like me aren't allowed to. You would never see Norman Finkelstein on there. Now you can. And to a degree, X has allowed it some.
Yeah.
But way better than the last regime.
100%.
But X is really bad on some other things. So, but TikTok didn't care. And Red Note doesn't care. The Chinese one. Maybe you can't criticize China, but you can say whatever you want about the U.S. and Israel. And that's a good thing. And that's what they wanted to do. So he's saying, if you guys at Meta and Amazon and X and Google don't stop banning conservatives and going after my base and doing all the things you did in 2016, 2020, then TikTok stays. So they're all there kissing his ass in the front row. Oh, please don't let them stay. They're our competitor, and they're going against the algorithm. And Ted Cruz said the quiet part out loud, so did Mitt Romney. They're like, there's anti-Israel propaganda on that app and not the others. And Donald Trump let the cat out of the bag too. They go, what are you going to do with the Kit Kat? He's like, I don't know. Maybe we should get like a 50% share. It's worth nothing or $1 trillion, but we should have half. I don't think he understands how ByteDance works, and that's already multinationally owned, and it's from Singapore, not China. That doesn't matter. But he said, and maybe we'll police it a little bit or a lot. That's the goal. You can keep TikTok if we can police content critical of Israel. That's all it is.
So that's, yeah. And for me right now, so my missus doesn't like Donald Trump, okay? And I was like cheering Donald Trump on when I was watching him say some stuff which I thought was hilarious. It was funny. And she's going to be like,
how can you not? That's all.
But the thing is, like, he was talking about making Canada the 51st state, taking Greenland. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, this guy's crazy. And I'm laughing my head off. And she's going to be, like, so, and I turn around and said, flippant comment, I love the geezer. I love Donald Trump. And she lost her shit. And she's going like, you like him? We can't be together and this, that, and the other. And I went, okay, I don't like him. It was a flippant comment, this and the other. And then the next day or two, what happened? Gaza, ceasefire formed. By what? By the sheer willpower of this man just saying, I'm sending someone over to you. To Benjamin.
You're ruining my inauguration.
He's going like, Saturday, 10 o'clock, be in your office to Benjamin Netanyahu. Benjamin Netanyahu goes, I can't be there on a Saturday. It's what's it called, Shabbat, and this, that, and the other. The guy's going like, I'll be there at 10. You be there at 10, whether you like it or not. Donald wants to do the deal. You're going to do the deal. Now, you know as well as I do, if Kamala Harris had won, nothing would have changed. So that's, for me, even the 3 days of peace we've had for Gaza, thank you, Donald Trump. Thank you, Donald Trump. Even if it doesn't last the 42 days, any respite is better than nothing.
And
so
he doesn't care if there's what's on TikTok or if he has to make them get in line. He's just using them in deal making to get Google and X and the others to get in line and stop banning conservatives, because he wants them to stop banning his people so that they can fight against this stuff with immigration and the issues that are important to him. I don't think he cares about Palestinians or Israelis. Not really. He wants that Israeli money. He'll do what he wants for, Miriam Adelson. I got ready to say Sheldon. He's dead, but Sheldon Adelson financed him for a long time. But he's in. He cannot get reelected. Man, I have to like some. You got to like something he did. He got up there first. Thing he did is says, okay, there are two genders, male and female. I think he said man and woman, whatever. That's that. No more of this other shit. Common sense policy. And I was just like, oh, what a relief. Because that crap was an assault on the fabric of reality itself. You cannot just pretend to be a different gender and through the magic of make-believe force other people to act like they think a man's a woman or a woman's a man.
That's
super simple. Men have a penis. Women can't drive.
That's what Andrew Tate says and Tristan Tate. I watched their tweets. Those boys are hilarious. And by the way, I don't believe a fucking word against them. Was it yours, really?
Well, he's been on the women can't drive joke for a long time. So now I just made a new joke out of it. But the whole repeal the 19th and stuff. Like, we don't, come on.
I get accused of misogyny quite badly by people saying Hoz is a misogynist, this, that, and the other. But I mean, it's just a joke. I think
it's a reaction to all the male bashing. I think it's sort of there, especially young men, when you tell them you can't say this, I can't say that, well, that, whatever it is, whatever you tell them they're not allowed to say, they're going to say it, 10 times more, because they know they don't like being told what to do. And
I had a funny experience with my nephew Reza, who came round yesterday to my house. And he said to me, yeah. I said, you all right? He's going, yeah, I'm joining the bruv party. I said, what? He's 8 years old. He's not even a 18-year-old. He's gone, yeah, they're talking sense. And I'm like, mate, I'm the Workers' Party. I'm in the Workers' Party. And he comes out for me when my election took place. He was out on the road. It's going to be...
Well, you could support both. You really could just be against labor and conservatives or even reform. I mean, it depends on your area and the realistic chance of winning it. And you got to play with the gerrymandering and whatnot. But the more parties like that that have a decent following, the better. The more competition, the better, because it forces the established parties to sort of move the needle that direction, or they're going to lose votes to those other parties.
What I'm going to say to you is, and the importance of the Tate brothers and what they've done is this. This is the most, and it's a seismic event that's taken place in British politics. And people may not understand it, but they will understand it as time goes by. There are so many places where two parties, Tories and Labour, are quite close to each other. Now, if these two boys are able to convert people like my nephew, who's not got anything to do with politics, and I mean nothing to do with politics, but to turn around and say, I like the Bruv Party, they're going to be people who are attracted to the brand. Now, the brand itself, some of the stuff they're talking about is complete madness. I mean, like putting people who for a knife crime in a prison cell, solitary confinement with a camera live on them for 24 hours a day for the rest of their lives, and then not allowed out as a form of punishment. Those kind of things are crazy things, okay? But the rest of the stuff, some of the stuff they say, attracts young people. The point I'm trying to make is this. There are going to be places in this country where the vote for them could be a deciding vote. Now, those two guys may decide to run, let's say, for a seat in Luton, which is where they come from. Let's say Luton South to North. I can see them through the sheer force of their character be able to do something. But the important one is the message to young people. And we have got a huge deficit, Ryan, a huge deficit in this country with young people who cannot be bothered with politics. They cannot be bothered with elections.
Because they feel demoralized.
Completely demoralized, and also because they don't have anyone who they consider to be a thought leader, whereas these two are thought leaders. My son, for instance, is 18 years old, and he's a paid-up member of the Tate Foundation. He gets training from them. Now, those kind of people, if you turn around and say to them, politics is sexy, politics is what I want you to do, it's going to change the demographic of the voting population. And there are millions of people who are 16 years old
first, and they've definitely been, a swift right hook in the culture war. They have done, damage to the bad guys, let's say. And the next step is when you have culture and media, you run, and you run. And I don't know how long it will take Bruv to go, but they could win seats. And it gives young people an entry point, even if they change their mind later and I like worker more, I like reform more, whatever. I like Bruv's platform, what I saw of it. I was like, okay, I'm against knifing. These are all pretty common sense stuff to me. I would like to know more, about elder care and health and stuff like that. But as far as fighting crime, anti-drug, all that, yes, absolutely. There's no reason to let rapists out of jail because you don't have enough jail space. Build another jail then. You can't just let people out of jail who are hardcore criminals that rape and murder. That should never happen. Build a tower. Do whatever. Execute them. Do something. But you don't let them out. And that's what Labor did.
Yeah.
And Bruv could they could make a coalition. It's going to grow. And they know what they're doing. The hyperbole and the style, whatever, that's what appeals to the youth. The fine-tuned arguments and stuff come after. You gotta cast a wide net. You gotta get support. You gotta get voters. And Trump did this too. Build a wall. That's a nice sounding slogan, very easy to understand and stuff. It's not like the nuance of tariffs and trade and the economic policies and taxes boring. It's, hey, put those criminals that pull out knives in prison. That's who disagrees with that? Nobody,
No.
except Starmer apparently. But yeah, simple things. There's so many problems in the UK that are not difficult. We know why Japan doesn't have those problems or Korea doesn't have those problems, because when someone does anything like that, they go to jail and they're never let out.
Yeah, I mean, that's some of it. And some of the other stuff they're talking about is like, for instance, the sense of being British, the idea of being British. That's something that my party is 100% behind. I mean, so that's a complete crossover as the Workers' Party and the Bruv Party. We love Britain. we're not ashamed of Britain, and we're not like, hiding who we are. And we'd like people to turn around and take pride in the country that you're living in. And it
How
would be nice.
embarrassing was it to see Keir Starmer on a heavy bag?
Yeah. Oh my God.
I felt
Did I
like
send you that
that hurt the
video?
national pride. It almost took technique to be such a pussy willow. How could you be an adult? Like if you never thrown a ball or something, like anything.
I'm with you, mate. I've got a video, and I'll send it to you afterwards, of George Galloway and a video of Keir Starmer. In fact, I'll put it on
Because George
Twitter.
is a boxer.
George is actually a boxer, so it's not really
Right.
fair to compare them. George used to box.
Yeah, but
when he was
I swear a 3-year-old could. I'm only using my kid because of that, but like a little kid could hit a bag harder than Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
No, that's not hyperbole. That's not a figure of speech. That is a fact.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't mean some savant martial art. I mean like a normal kid that could do it harder than him.
I mean, that's one of the things that they spoke about, which I don't have a problem with. I think that people should be involved in physical activities. They should be involved in the kind of sports that gives you a heads up on a situation where you could, in the future, have that, like wrestling and boxing and judo and all sorts of other things that would help
or
people.
Swimming or running or whatever,
Yeah, all of those things are important things, and it's not part of our school curriculum anymore. It used to be. In my day, when I was at school in the 1970s, we had a judo teacher. We had a judo teacher that would come in every Saturday, spend a couple of hours on the mats, and I learned how to physically move and do things that my kid gets personal training from a friend of mine, Kevin. Kevin is an French Foreign Legionnaire, and he's taught my son multiple disciplines, like 4 or 5, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, boxing, and all sorts of exercises. That's the kind of training young men should have. And we don't have that. And if you've got respect for someone's fighting and for this, that, and the other, it makes you not want to turn around and go to blades and want to stab each other. And my son is one of the most nicest, well-rounded people, and he's basically got respect for people's privacy and
it's
and
really
space.
like almost any sport, but especially the contact sports, because someone with a big ego can't get through all the practice of judo, jiu-jitsu, boxing, whatever. They get humbled too many times, they want to quit. But it doesn't matter if you never use it in your life. It doesn't matter if it was basketball, whatever, the endurance and stuff you need to play soccer or something like that. It's mental training. It carries over in all aspects of your life, whether you're just lifting weights or whatever, or some sport, some martial art.
Yeah.
I'd even argue to a degree, I think young men need to be more physical, but like mastering a musical instrument or something takes the same kind of discipline and like grit, strength, like tenacity to stay with something, practice. That'll carry it as a skill that you can use when you're developing your willpower, that you can apply to other things that seem unrelated. So I'm telling you, that guy that does the Michael Jordan, that sits out there late at night in his yard shooting foul shots over and over and over again to perfect it. So that person is the same kind of person that will go the extra mile in whatever job they end up in, because they have that mindset. Your mindset is one of the most important things that separates you from failures, is your mentality. If you have the wrong mentality, the excuse maker, the one that blames everybody else, oh, it's because of my color, or because I'm a woman, or because of this, because of that, whatever. It's most often not. It's probably you. You can't come in 2 weeks and think you should be the manager or whatever. So, and you can see it. I can tell with the kids. I mean, I'm an advocate for martial arts. I think it's the most holistic one. I think gymnastics and things, you could argue probably similar results. But mastering a craft, the physical one, is good for your body. It's healthy, and it's not unrelated to your mind. And I don't mean just your brain. I mean your mind. And sharpening your mindset is one of the best things you can do, especially to youth, because they'll be able to take that, not give up in math or whatever it is. They will have the proper mindset to sit there and figure it out. Stick to itness or whatever. Something you can't teach. It's something you have to learn through practice. Just like building muscles. And it's not like, well, I went to the gym and I did a bench and I did pull-ups and I did this and there wasn't any change. Like, well, yeah, you can't go to the gym once and think that's going to make you stronger. It's a cumulative effect. You can't do martial arts for like a month and quit. You have to stay consistent, or whatever the sport is, years of this. And same
Absolutely.
thing with weightlifting. A year of weightlifting, or maybe 6 months, you'll start to see a difference. You will have better reaction time. You will have it like very quickly. Wrestling, basketball, tennis, table tennis. You're definitely going to have eye coordination within weeks if you do something like that. But you'll see greater results in a non. It's like adjacent things. You're developing your mindset in A, and it carries over to B, C, and D when you need it.
Yeah,
And that's
I
what you're
agree.
doing. Like, well, when am I going to punch somebody? Probably never. But to have that in your face and to be been in that situation, to been pinned on the map and someone trying in a controlled way to break your arm or whatever, you have to deal with that level of stress, panic, and pressure. And if you can, then, if there's, say, a fire at your school, you don't freak out. You're like, okay, line up, do this. You keep your calm. Maybe you're, save someone from drowning, whatever. You keep cool because you've been in these situations plenty of times.
I agree. Ryan, we've done about an hour, mate. I don't know how you're feeling. I know it's like 11 or 12 o'clock. Is it 11 o'clock over there right now for you in Korea?
It is. You just want to run through some of Trump's executive orders, like yes or no?
I'd be grateful because I don't want to kill you, basically. So if you want to just
I'm going to Japan tomorrow night because the next day is the Yamayaki Matsuri. It's a festival for burning a mountain. They have a controlled burn, and they burn the whole mountain. Don't worry, it's not LA. So
can you video that for us?
there'll be plenty of videos of it, but yeah, I'll take some pictures of video. It's gonna be
Right.
good, but we can have time tonight to knock out not 100 of them, but the big ones. So first one we already said, men and women. That's great. Total thumbs up for me. He put a 90-day pause on foreign aid. Love it. All foreign aid. I don't know if it included military, but everybody, 90-day pause. That's a good one.
Apart from Israel, though.
No, everybody. Now, military aid, well, Biden just gave them $2.5 billion, and Biden just gave Ukraine $8 billion, so they're not in desperate need. Biden set the house on fire on his way out. That's the problem. But yeah, I mean, he pardoned Fauci. He pardoned the Jan 6 committee. He pardoned Milley. He pardoned his family. All the criminals. And by the way, I have a film, The Biden Crime Syndicate, goes over all of that. James Biden, Hunter Biden, all the Bidens. They're all guilty, and they all just got a pardon, except for Joe himself. That's what we were all hoping. Barron said to him, like, forgot to pardon yourself.
So what do you think of Ross's pardon, the Silk Road?
I don't like it. I know all these people that say, oh, all he just did is make a website. That's not true. That is not what happened. Usually it's like government bad, website guy good. That's sort of the trope. And that is a little bit light switch brain. And some of the like free market is my religion people and like the Bitcoin cult just automatically side with Ross because he used Bitcoins in his business and he was one of the earliest people to do it. The guy moved around 1.2 billion in narcotics. Almost all of Silk Road was drugs. It also allowed for human trafficking and every other nasty thing because there was no real policing of it and he didn't care. And worse than that, this guy tried to do 6 different contract killings because Silk Road was open to extortion. People could have a list of buyers and they go, look, I'm going to publicly release all the buyers. And that will hurt Silk Road. And so, fortunately, people were not being killed, but he was under the impression they were. See, a guy approached him. This guy was a true scammer. He came in and saying, I need my money now. I need to talk to the boss. I'm going to get killed. He finally reaches him, gives him this story. And then the person he owed money to, which is still the same guy, because he's all these characters as one person, comes and talks to Ross and says, why don't we just get rid of this guy. You give me $100,000, I'll make the problem go away. And he did. And he would end up doing this 5 more times to procure, like they were running LSD out of Canada and all these different narcotics and stuff over and over again as his moinker was Dread Pirate Roberts after The Princess Bride. He sent money on the blockchain. We got the receipts, hundreds of thousands of dollars to have people killed. So fuck Ross Ulbricht. This guy wasn't actually killing them, but he thought they were. And he sent him photographs of like messed up bodies in a chair and stuff. He paid. And people, their last retort, because they, Bitcoin is their religion or whatever, they're like, no, there was different Dread Pirate Roberts, just like the movie. Okay. Well, all his defense would have to do is show where he sent a message or was even logged in while Ross had an alibi. And they couldn't. And in fact, when they caught him, he was logged in as Dread Pirate Roberts. And they had these messages. The problem is, to the investigators, we're also crooks. You had this guy named Carl Force and Sean Bridges, and Bridges stole $820,000 and Force stole hundreds of thousands of dollars. In fact, they confiscated property from people from Mt. Gox, a Japanese Bitcoin exchange, and then put it in their own personal account. So these guys were rotten to the core, but they're both in jail also. And so it looked like, well, these guys are really corrupt, and they just made up these charges on Ross. And this is where the details really matter, because they'll say, and really prominent good people like Thomas Massey have bitten the shit sandwich here. They're like, well, there are these accusations of contract killings, but then those charges went away. No, they didn't. Here's what happened there. The man that was pretending to do all these killings and stuff wasn't caught. They knew Red and White, but they didn't know who Red and White was. They just knew his little handle on the exchange. They caught him in 2018. Ross was prosecuted in 2015. Ross had already moved $1.2 billion in narcotics. That's enough to give him 2 life sentences plus 40 years anyway. So you don't need the murder for hire charges. And you can't really, it's not worth it to even mess with that when you haven't arrested the main culprit in it. Once they got him, then they had all the evidence. Yep, 6 different times. 5 times with this guy, 1 with another guy, where he tried to have people murdered. So fuck him. He should stay in jail forever. And I'm not really cool with moving around billions of dollars in narcotics either, because I don't personally care if you, as an adult, do drugs. That's on you, whatever. That's not my problem. It's when you have an illegal black market business that finances other things, which includes the human trafficking and the other nasty shit, which definitely was also happening on Silk Road. I bust pedophiles like every year. I find these fuckers and do this. And when you have, this nondescript way to trade anything, yes, a lot of it's going to be drugs. Some of it's going to be children. Some of it is going to get worse and worse. And that's what was going on. And he facilitated the whole thing. And they're like, oh, free market, bro. I'm like, look, I'm not an anarchist. I'm fine with libertarian, but libertarian does not say just do whatever. Like, it's just saying get the government out of playing favorites in the market. You don't let the government decide winners and losers, be that through regulation or, corporate nepotism, blah, 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 blah. Get rid of all that. It doesn't mean just anybody trade whatever, no victimless crime, yada, yada, yada. That's not what it means. And prominent libertarians like Ron Paul were in the government. They never said get rid of borders, get rid of age of consent, get rid of if you want to legalize drugs under the argument that you think people are doing them anyway, and if you legalize it, that'll remove the criminality of it so people can seek help easier, and you can make that argument.
Yeah.
I personally think you can just kill the drug dealers. I mean, El Salvador pretty much proved that. Like, no, this is what you do. You find the people selling drugs and you wipe them out and it goes away. It really does. They don't try to do that because they're in the business of drug management, because black market drugs play for black market budgets, which lets you people do things like hiring terrorists, which they did. They used the opium profits to hire things like HTS. Because you can't go to Congress and say, hey, give me $2 billion to, pay Al Qaeda. You have to pay them through other means. That's why they had contraband during Iran-Contra. That's why they sold opium out of Vietnam and Afghanistan, cocaine from Colombia and Nicaragua. They flooded Miami, New Orleans, and Los Angeles with coke to pay for mercenary armies. And so you have to understand what's being done with this drug money. And for Ross, it was to make himself rich. That's what he cared. He wasn't some free market experiment. He didn't care about Bitcoin other than you don't know who's receiving and stuff. Like you can't get in and figure it out. But you can see which blockchains receipts were made when they're in their messages, and they were, and he had contract killings. So I would move the argument away from the drugs, even though I think that, look, that is illegal. You are supposed to go to jail. You can argue, oh, it shouldn't be. Well, guess what? It is, and you're supposed to go to jail. That's not what the pardon's for. But they think, oh man, he just made a website. He didn't sell drugs himself. Other people did that on his thing. He's this innocent little goober that didn't know better. That's crap. He absolutely got in there and was moving around LSD himself and tried to have people murdered. And there was open extortion, and he knew it, and he didn't clean that up. His way of cleaning it up was kill the people that were talking about it.
So can I just say to everyone who's watching this is why I love Ryan. Because before he's just told me all this stuff.
And you know how pro-free market I am. I'm a Ron Paul, I'm that. But this is not that, dude. That guy, and it's the Adam Kokesh, Dave Smith clique that turned a great movement with Ron Paul from libertarianism into this anarcho-capitalist bullshit. Anarchy sucks. You need laws. You do have shitheads. Social contract is a necessary thing. Get bent.
I mean, as I said, you've changed my mind on the whole situation. I was happy that he got out. But after hearing what you said, it's another one of those things where I had an idea of what I thought 9/11
nobody
was.
knows.
And you explained it. I learned.
Yeah, well, a lot of, Thomas Massey, Tulsi Gabbard, Donald Trump, RFK, they all think all he did was make a website because there are Bitcoin bros dedicated to telling that lie. And it is because you do have two investigators who were stealing Bitcoin for themselves and doing the same thing Ross was doing, taking hundreds of thousands of dollars. That looks so bad. The people who were policing it were horrible. But look, it's not good guy, bad guy. This is not a G.I. Joe cartoon. You can have bad guy, another bad guy. And that's what you had. The cops were messed. The feds were messed. Ross was messed up. They all stole for money from people. But Bridges and Force didn't try to kill anybody. Ross did 6 times and paid for it. What I'm trying to pretend to be a badass online. He was sending money for these contracts. Massive amounts of money and negotiating it. And we have the receipts. I have the messages. And I'm he's sitting here saying, I've only done this once before. It's March 29th, I believe. That's the date. They're going back and forth, Red and White and Dread Pirate Roberts, and he's talking about having people murdered. And yeah. And it was so funny because he was getting conned the whole time. The con man got conned by a better con man.
Let me ask you about Donald Trump, and because one of the promises he made is, first day I come into power, I'm going to stop the war in Ukraine. We're on day 3 or 4. What are your thoughts on that?
What he said is, I'll have that done in 24 hours. That doesn't mean the first day. So on his website, his first agenda was about 100 executive orders to stop the bleeding and undo the damage Biden did. That he can do without Congress. Anything he can do without Congress was done day 1. Executive order, did them all. Other things that he's going to do, particularly with the border, with opening up oil pipelines in Alaska, drill baby drill, all that. He can't just do that on his own. He's going to have to go to Congress. But Ukraine is on that list of things. So, and he already did tell Zelensky, you have to talk to Russia or else. He never heard that from Biden. They would have meetings where Russia wasn't invited. I'm like, how can you can't be serious. John McAfee, you can't be serious. You can't have a peace settlement when one of the parties that's in the war isn't there. That's like an Israeli peace settlement where the Palestinians aren't even at the table. It's just the U.S. and Israel talking about what to do with Gaza. That's what was happening. Trump said to Zelensky, talk to Russia or else. Yeah. So that is step 1. They have to try to hammer it out. Now, will the U.S. come in and arbitrate? Sure. But I think he's saying, look, I'm not giving you money. I'm not giving you guns. I might pull out of NATO completely. Just end this damn thing. This is pointless. You're going to lose all that territory anyway. You've run out of personnel. You can't win this war. Negotiate while you still have some leverage, because it only gets worse from here. And I heard Trump say before, even a bad deal is better than no deal for Ukraine. And those oblasts are gone, especially Donbass. The Luhansk and Donetsk do not want to be part of Ukraine. You fired artillery at them. You broke the Minsk Accord. You attacked them. They're gone. Zaporozhye down to Kherson, and obviously Crimea. Kiss it goodbye. Those are Russian now. If you want to lose Kharkiv too, if you want to lose Odessa, keep fucking around, because they're going to take it. And it's not in American interest to spend all this money and arms and sanctions on Russia for the sake of Ukraine. There's no return from Ukraine unless you're a criminal syndicate like Biden that was using Ukraine as a method of laundering money to the DNC. That's all over. And I hope they get into that, Sam Bankman-Fried and all that. I hope Trump will investigate that. I wish Matt Gaetz had gotten sworn in, but well, he would have been great.
He would have been great as well.
That was his best pick, hands down. Pam's not bad, but Gaetz was the man.
And that's why they made sure that he wasn't able to do anything, because they got him to, like they did with the Tates and with what's his name?
Wrap-up smear. As Nancy Pelosi would say, what a wrap-up smear. They did it to Gaetz. Very interesting. And I put this on Twitter, and of course there was no answers. What they did was, first of all, the DOJ did an investigation into the honey traps and that whole crap. It's actually this guy named Joel Greenberg. It's a long story. But anyway, they cleared him. Gaetz said no wrongdoing. Justice Department went through, found the people who were actually guilty, got them. Gaetz, no. And they tried this extortion to Gaetz' father, blah, blah, blah. The point is that Biden's Justice Department has no love for Matt Gaetz, could not find any evidence of Matt Gaetz doing anything illegal with any women or anything else. So then they have the ethics committee do an investigation. And what they did was so clever. They claimed that the Matt Gaetz investigation was hacked, and they only released the accusations from these women, but not the conclusion that showed these women are full of shit and even admitted they were lying in another case. They didn't do that part. They just said, here's these horrible accusations of Gaetz with a 17-year-old, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And not the conclusion. But they knew, you only have to create enough smoke from this day to this day so he won't be chosen or confirmed by the Senate. And then he's not a threat. So after the time passes and they waited till he left Congress, but wasn't part of the cabinet yet, to come out with this smear. So he lost his congressional seat, but did not gain a cabinet seat. It was a beautiful maneuver in a way from sycophants or whatever, but he'll be back. I mean, whatever, but he was not guilty of what they accused, and they knew it. And there's no way that this info was hacked. They just leaked the portion they wanted the public to hear to the New York Times to smear him so he would not be in the cabinet, because they know he would go after them all.
And you know what? He's one of the...
I made a video about that too on Gaetz that goes through names. It really ought to be a movie. The crap Joel Greenberg, he's the guy guilty of everything they accuse Gaetz of. Where have we seen that before? This dude, he has like 33 felonies. It's Trailer Park Boys level, just unconscionable crap that he was doing. Like, how is he not in jail for the first felony? How did he get to do all of these? It's truly comical and how bad of a criminal he was. But anyway, the video is on, it's on my Rumble, and it's somewhere on Twitter, I'm sure, but it's the Matt Gaetz saga. And
when we finish this thing, what you're going to do for me, if you don't mind, is send me a link for every single video that we've discussed today, and I'm going to add them and post.
The Biden crime family, and the Gaetz video off the top of my head.
And Epstein.
Well, there's so much videos on Epstein I've done, and 9/11. That's
well, just give me one or two, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it a thread. I'm going to just add to it so that people can turn around and go and see your stuff. And as I've said, everything that I've seen of yours has got receipts. Everything has got a receipt. And if anyone's watching this and is not already following Ryan, you're an idiot. Follow Ryan. Just follow this guy. He's literally the guy that opens my brain up for me on a regular basis with the information he gives me.
You're suddenly not an idiot if you follow, though. That's how it
No,
works.
if you start following him, you stop being an idiot. In fact, that's one of the ways of curing it.
If you want to get smarter, you need this Boycott Israel coffee in our store. It's to be honest, it's regular coffee. It's not awesome, not bad, but you just want to have this packaging really sitting on your shelf. That's great.
I'm gonna get a link of that and put it in my what's it called as well in the thread, and I'm gonna put that everywhere as well for your shop. It's really, it's always talking with you is always fascinating, and I really appreciate.
What people have said is pretty good actually. I thought it was like this is good. I'm not a coffee person though, so I'm not a good judge. Coffee people like it, but I think it's psychological. I think like because it's coming out of here, it just makes it better.
Anything that is against Israel is good by us because we know that they are murderous, genocidal, ethnic cleansing turds.
It really is the moral issue of our day and has been.
It is.
Prior to the war after the October 7th, they have been engaged in routine ethnic cleansing operations my whole life. And what they go through in the West Bank through the settler colonization, I mean, this is like killing the Indians level. Like, why is this happening in the current year? This is a 17th century stuff. This is like Bronze Age morality. Like, God gave me your living room. Unbelievable that this can happen. And there are people like, well, the Bible says da da da. I go, that's not what the Bible says. That anyway. You can't kill kids. Don't point to your holy book. You can't kill kids.
Yeah, and what I'll say to you to add on top of that is the biggest deficit in humanity has been shown by the political leadership of the West, who have sat there and watched one agency after another come out and say this is a genocide. Doctors have come out and said that kids are being targeted. Why are you shooting kids in the chest? Why are you shooting kids in the head? There's x-rays showing all of this is happening. And our political leaders have done nothing. And I mean, literally nothing has been done by them. They've just
even cut off the aid and the arms flow.
Israel has the right to defend itself. What the fuck is Israel?
Like fire on LA. Just that fire has a right to defend itself. It has a right to exist, to burn those houses. It's just you're Nazis. Like that. The epitome of evil for like our grandparents was World War II. It was Stalin, it was Hitler, it was these characters that murdered millions, it was Mao, And our generation's Hitler is Netanyahu.
100%.
He is just wiping out Gaza Strip. Some 70-80% of the buildings are gone or in rubble. They're throwing cats off roofs and stuff today. Shooting nurses. They've broken the ceasefire. Snipers shot 2 18-year-olds and a child. Who knows what they did while we were talking. They probably murdered some more people. Mass arrests, Lincoln style, with no, warrants or anything in the West Bank. They just, you're a fighting age male, line them up, send them to prison. So they release their hostages, and then they just go grab and arrest a bunch of people with no trial and put them in jail as replacements. And we knew that's what was going to happen. And they're finding bodies too. In Rafah, 132 bodies found the first day. Very predictable. And 2 guys that have been on top of this with the numbers are John Mersheimer and Ralph Nader. They've been on it as far as like what probably really is based on ratio to wounded and whatnot. It's way above the 45,000, whatever they're admitting right now. That number's been frozen for months. It's way above it, unfortunately.
It's why I became a politician. It's why I joined the Workers' Party. I joined the Workers' Party on the 25th of February, 2024, because I've been sitting here waiting for politicians to do something, and they've done nothing. And the only person out of all of them that I had any time for was George Galloway and Jeremy Corbyn. And Jeremy Corbyn's not doing anything, not having a political party.
Him too. They called,
yeah, of course.
All over, and there was Al Jazeera had that expose on the lobby, one in Britain, one in the United States, and Jeremy Corbyn was the main target. All these groups are calling him anti-Semitic when he absolutely isn't. And they tried that with Galloway too, but it didn't work. Israel is not the Jews. Israel is a state, just like North Korea is a state. Like I live in South Korea, so you can't say North Korea is the Koreans or is a product of Koreanness, and Israel is not a product of Jewishness or whatever that is. It's a country, and some countries suck. And those two, North Korea and Israel, are pretty bad. Albeit a lot of North Korea's problems are also because of the pressure put on them from outside and all that. But like, Israel's had every benefit and aid and everything, and they still act that way. So, you can't put that on an ethnic group or a religion, and they know that. And when they call one like Galloway or Corbyn or whomever anti-Semitic, they know it's not true. They don't care. The point of a wrap-up smear is character assassination and defamation. Now, fortunately, men like that, they're on TV. They're part of the British government. They have a radio show or something, or they're still out on YouTube, so they can kind of counteract the smear on them. Or someone like Roger Waters, whatever, like, yeah, he's a multimillionaire. Just call him what names, doesn't matter. But other people that don't have that prominence, that get those labels from the ADL, the SPLC, etc., like me, I'm on Canary Mission, all this crap, made up or cherry picked or whatever, they'll destroy your life. They'll kick you off every platform, every payment processor. They call you a Nazi, a white supremacist. And it's funny too, because then the actual Nazis and white supremacists call you a Zionist for not blaming the Jews. And then you've got Zionists that call you a Nazi for blaming Israel.
Did you see the tweet that Sam Parker put out? Fucking hilarious. Sam Parker put a tweet out saying, and we're here for a handing over ceremony from one Zionist to another. A four-year handover of power from one Zionist administration to the next, or something like that. Or anyway, for me,
it's like that from LBJ to Trump, like all the way. They've all been Zionists. A little bit. Jimmy Carter definitely changed after he was no longer president. He wrote that book, Peace, Palestine, Peace, Not Apartheid. I think, he went and he visited and woke
that's
him up.
right.
And that happened to Robert Kennedy too. After he went over there, he knew he never got his chance. They shot him in 1968. He would have won, I'm pretty confident. But yeah, and Reagan, at least they didn't have total control. He pulled out of Lebanon, for example. He was playing this game of cornering the Soviets, state to state to whatever. But it got so bad under the Bushes and Clinton and Obama and Trump, and then Biden. Biden basically was asleep at the wheel, and Anthony Blinken ran the country, and he's a hardcore Zionist, like Richard Pearl, John McCain level, like
Israeli first.
On a scale of 1 to John Bolton, he's a John Bolton. That's how bad Blinken is.
Israeli first is what I call him. He thinks of Israel before he
Israeli only is what I'd call him. Not even first. There's no
You're
second.
Right.
There's only
You're
that.
Absolutely right.
They have this fantasy of like they're fighting Amalek or whatever, this like distorted biblical cherry pick theocratic fascism. It's a weird thing. Like the Nazis had this like social Darwinistic crap, and the Israelis like God ordained racism basically. And it's weird because they're not even a race uniformly. They're from wherever. It's an identity, but they don't see it like that. So whatever. It's stupid. It's so stupid. We're coming back here from 3,000 years ago. I go, they were also there 3,000 years ago. Oh, that doesn't.
Did you hear the joke that what's his name did? Chappelle? Okay, and let me tell you this one that killed me again. So Chappelle made a joke. Huh?
Is it the space shoes?
Oh, mate, that joke. I'm going to say it because people don't know it. I'm not. Dave Chappelle turned around and said, "I'm going to tell you about a film I'm making, and it's a film about an alien race that used to be part of the Earth. They left Earth and went to another planet, and on another planet they ended up, in that star system, and it was fucked up and it got ruined, and there was no way of living there. So they decided to come back to Earth, and when they got to Earth, they came back here and they wanted to take over the place because." They used to own what's it called? They used to live here. And the name of the film is Space Juice. Oh my God, I fucking died. It's hilarious.
Anyway. The jester has power. Like, making fun of the emperor is equivalent to, making God bleed type of thing. It's like you got to be able to poke fun of power, speak truth to power, and comedy is one of those vehicles. It is a political vehicle. It's not just ha ha ha, we're telling jokes. Late night comedians have become part of the political establishment. They're not really there for comedy. They're there for affirmation. They'll just say, "Oh, Trump's a racist. Everyone clap. See what I said? I'm so obedient." That's what they're doing. Like this distraction of Elon Musk doing the Bellamy salute or the Roman salute. By the way, the Roman salute was not done by Romans. It's from a 1794 painting that was later picked up in media and art. It really didn't become the Roman salute till about 1919 from a film where they would depict Romans doing that salute, even though they didn't ever do that salute except in this one painting. And it's the same thing with a thumbs up, thumbs down. This is like negative and this is positive. But that was a gladiator. This meant run them through. This meant put your sword down. So this was mercy. And that was
Really?
kill. And they got it backwards. And that was also a misinterpretation of a painting. So you do need art historians because they can point this kind of stuff out. But I'm sorry for the nerd stuff, but it's not a Roman salute. In fact, the U.S. used to do that same salute with the Pledge of Allegiance. Now, and even in the fascist period with Mussolini, I'm not going to do it, but it's from the hip up, going like that. I'm not, it wasn't from the chest out as the Germans did it. And so there's this one the Hezbollah does where they do to the heart and then out. I'm not going to do it out because someone will screen cap it and take it out of context, as I'm aware of. That's happened once. I was reaching up for my camera and someone was like, "Look, he's doing the Hitler thing." And I'm like, I'm supposed to know what video that's from. I don't pay attention to, I'm like, I don't know what that is. They're all the same background, whatever. But that's what I finally found it. I'm like, look, here's the clip. You're going to make me waste my day to go find it and show where I'm just adjusting the camera. Fucking idiots. But yeah, Elon did this stupid thing. He's clearly not but they spent all day about this fascist symbolism. And I'm thinking, Israel's murdering kids doing fascist things right now. Who cares about the hand gesture? The Nazis lost. They're gone. They have no power. Some guy with tattoos in New Jersey really is not significant. The Zionists have power, have a lobby. They've got UDP and AIPAC. UDP is getting bigger than AIPAC is. They control politicians. They run blackmail rings and they murder people every day. Those are the Nazis. You don't have to look, this guy did a hand gesture that looks like this other thing that's misattributed to Rome. Who cares what he does with his hands? He's not a Nazi. Come on, you can not like Elon for other things he did, but that's not one of them.
So I'm going to push back a little bit with you, mate. And I personally think that what he did do looked very much like a Nazi salute. And I
did, yeah, for sure.
And what I'll say to you is, in my opinion, he should just own it and say, "Look, I fucking did it. I'm an idiot. Get on with it." That's my personal.
For most people, they don't have World War II playing in the background of their head all day. There is a culture of people who are just obsessed with race and racism, sexism, homophobia. Yeah, and so when they see that thing, it's like, boom. It's like when Greta Thunberg I have this red octopus back here. I had it, but whatever. She had an octopus plushie in the background of something when she had something like Free Palestine. And somebody's mind went right to a 1938 poster of an octopus with a Star of David on it and made it some anti-Semitic symbol or whatever. 100% that's not why she had an octopus. She probably just likes octopus toys or whatever. She doesn't know about that poster or whatever, but someone that thinks about racism all day sees the world in those lenses, no matter what anybody does ever or says, even if it's a fucking number. They're like, oh, the number 8, that's a H and that's Hitler. Like, dude, 8 is 8, okay? And then, teenagers are going to lean into it. Like, oh, you don't like these numbers or animals or a whole list of things or watermelon or whatever. All these things are now anti-Semitism. Yeah. Well, more of these then, So yeah, that's why I have this. Like, this is just a red triangle. It's a shape. It's one of my kids' toys: squares, triangles, circles, ovals, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But this is in the Palestinian flag, and this has kind of become the marker in, Telegram of some of Satan's chosen lunatics getting some comeuppance from whomever, the resistance fighters. And so it's sort of a symbol of like, fuck you, Israel. So I like it. But
So
it's sort of ridiculous because it is a triangle and it's red. That's all it is. And I'm
yeah.
sure there are red triangles and logos and stuff and have been before this ever happened. You don't go and retroactively change them all. This is like the people that got rid of minorities that were on products, from like butter to syrup to whatever. They're like, oh, that's a stereotype. Like it is not. Uncle Ben, I have a packet of Uncle Ben's rice. That orange box right there where my finger is the
Yeah.
old rice packet with Uncle Ben. And I first ate rice because of that. Like, I didn't like rice. It's weird because I ended up moving to Asia and I eat it all the time. But there was a picture of this guy and it said Uncle Ben. And I like the Spider-Man story. His uncle is Uncle Ben, but whatever. And my mom gave it to me and I'll do it for Uncle Ben. And there's this nice smiling guy on the cover. I didn't even think that he was black or Indian or whatever. Just some dude with white hair. And I ate it. I was like, I'll eat this rice. This is better than the other rice. And I liked Uncle Ben's. And that was my go-to. And they took the guy off the box.
Yeah.
I think he was black.
He was black.
Yeah. See, I didn't even remember. It was black or Indian. It was some minority. Land O'Lakes was the Native American. And sorry when I say Indian, I mean Native American. That's my own heritage, by the way. But now we say Native American because it gets confused with people from India who are Indians or whatever. So I'll say,
You are Native American, aren't you?
I am. But the thing is, I didn't notice that as a kid. I just, whatever. There's a woman on the butter. It's not like, is she Lakota or whatever? Like, well, you can kind of guess. Lakes is Michigan, but it's just a generic, like, Native American woman. They removed the Indian and they kept the land. So maybe it was fitting. But I thought, this is ridiculous. You're getting rid of Mrs. Butterworth. You're getting rid of, but all the white icons like Colonel Sanders and stuff, they all could stay. I'm like, do you not see that you're doing the opposite of what you want?
Right.
And it's like, yes, Mrs. Butterworth is brown, or because it's maple syrup and it'd be hard to be any other color. The bottle is going to be brown because maple syrup is brown.
Madness, mate.
When you get rid of the Pillsbury Doughboy, it's body shaming. Like, I think they did. I think the little dude, you go, hoo-hoo, and hit his belly.
Yeah. I remember that.
They ovened him for real this time. Stupid. And I was like, dude, this is like window dressing. You're not actually fighting racism. You're control freaks and you just want to boss people around and make people cancel this, cancel that. You don't care. You don't deal with any actual racial issues. You just want this circus style stuff.
That's one thing I agree with you 100% to do with Elon Musk. I mean, for me, as I said, I think he did what he did, and I think it's wrong.
Well, he definitely did the salute, but I don't think he thinks about stuff like that all day.
No. What I'm going to say is 100% agree with you, which is a commentary that's been made by other people that you've said tonight, which is we've literally watched the genocide take place by literal Nazis, and you sat there and watched it happen in 4K.
The Israeli salute should be the new Roman salute.
Not said a fucking thing. But everyone on the planet now on the left is turning around and going, oh my God, he didn't hit the salute. Motherfucker, go and talk about the children whose heads are...
We kind of went sideways instead of straight out, if you want to be technical. But like, I've seen other politicians, Harris's VP did that. AOC's done that. It's just...
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, he's done that as well.
You're waving, you touch your heart, you wave to the crowd, whatever. It's not like he shouted "See Kyle" or something, but
no,
it's weird to me that like arm and hand, like you're trying to ban movement. It's like, look, they lost. Okay, they lost.
Yeah.
Other cultures like Hezbollah, I think Thailand, some others, they have a very similar salute. They're not going to change it just because the Germans sucked at it or whatever. And like, are you going to get rid of all the different types of salutes from, Russia, Italy, anybody that ever did anything bad? I mean, this is stupid.
It's done anyway. I mean, it's happened. I couldn't care less. And for me, as I said,
it's the intent that matters. If he said some racist shit and then did it, that would be very different. But that's not what was going on.
I mean, he has to be honest with you, with Elon Musk, for me, his messaging was, and this was that he said on the Lex Friedman thing, he turned around and said, if you want to stop Hamas, stop killing people in Palestine. And then he got taken to Auschwitz, he went to Israel, and he came back from there as a changed
boycott.
You understand me? It's like they switched a fucking key in him, and that key turned him into a brand new pro-Zionist wanker. And I mean, I'm the person that ends up
the whip the dog session. So they said, look, you're not going to have advertisers, you're not going to do that, and this is a weapon.
Yeah.
Anytime someone criticize legitimate criticism of Israel, because there are racists that will criticize Israel's camouflage because they actually just hate Jews. There are people like that. But anytime somebody criticizes Israel, they're just going to say anti-Semite and hate speech, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, dude, you're anti-Semitic. Making Jewish people responsible collectively for whatever Israel does, that's anti-Semitic.
Correct.
And they know that and don't care. They're not arguing in good faith. This is a weapon and they know it because it works. And as Thomas Sowell says, they are going to run that play all day until you find a way to defend against it.
Yeah. And I've got like friends of mine like Jackie Walker, I don't know who, like I've got loads of Jewish friends of mine. You know, without them, our marches would become hate marches. But the fact that we've got Jewish people out there carrying the Palestinian flag and saying louder than me, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
Self-hating Jews or whatever.
That's what they get called.
I know.
And it's awful for them because they get called capo, and then they are actually properly abused by these Zionists. So you got all these, like, I've got Jewish friends who are on Twitter, the Torah Jews.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Moses is a friend of mine from Torah Jews, and he always sends me stuff to retweet and whatever else. I can't turn around and hate Jews. Those guys are Jews. Israelis who are in Israel are not behaving like proper Jews. Proper Jews actually care about humanity. These guys don't care about anything other than the chosen people in their own head. And that's it. It's awful.
Yeah, it's not something you should have to explain to an adult. It's kind of like, you know, all dogs are animals, but not all animals are dogs. You can't blame the subset of a category and then blame the category as a whole for what some subset is doing. But that's what happens. And I see the same thing where, like, the whites are blamed for colonization, specifically from the British, French, and Spanish or something. Like, really? Did Ireland do that? Did Poland do that? Like, these are actions by governments. It's not from DNA. It's not intrinsic to whiteness. It's not intrinsic to Jewishness, even though that's not a race, whatever. It is the action of a state. And that's why I like giving the example of the two Koreas, because they are ethnically and racially and linguistically exactly the same, and they're as close as you can be in geography, but they're night and day in the way they operate. So the way North Korea operates to the way South Korea operates is not a product of their Koreanness. It is not from biology. Political decisions are software, not hardware. And Israel is a racist apartheid regime that engages in ethnic cleansing and genocide, and always has. It was set up like that from its inception by terrorist groups. And I have a movie on that too, how terrorists formed a nation. So it's like, and the British and the Americans, they foster the groups that they radicalize and the most radical elements on all sides. Whether that's the Salafist jihadists, you know, that overtook Syria, or the Zionist Jewish radicals in Israel. The radical movements get guns, they get money, they get political support, and any moderate movement does not.
Correct. Because they're easier to make deals with, and also you can rely on them to keep
fanatics are almost guaranteed violence, and that is the point.
Chaos. Chaos is what they're after, and that's what they're guaranteed to get chaos from these people. And at the end of the day, they don't want stability in any region. They don't want people not at each other's throats. They want people.
They went after all the secular leaders in the Middle East.
Yeah, exactly.
They didn't want a Ba'athist from Saddam. They really didn't like Nasser and his Pan-Arabism. They didn't like Gaddafi. They didn't like Bashir. Of course, any kind of unifying factor has to be smashed.
Correct. Divide and conquer. Julius Caesar's technique.
The guy that burned the Library of Alexander. What a great dude.
Exactly.
That is
And I just
called
wanted to say
elasticide, by the way,
what
or
I wanted to say as well when
discourse.
you were,
Go ahead.
sorry, I'm going to say the thing when you were talking about slavery as well, the people always assume it is literally just black people who have been enslaved.
That's
The
ignorant.
Barbary Coast, the Americans were getting white people. Americans were getting taken as slaves in North Africa. And that was happening as well. So slavery, again, is not something that's just to what color of person. People throughout history have been taken as slaves, not based on their color. It's been based on your people have been conquered. And whether you were an Iranian, whether you were, whatever type of person you were,
Or caste
if
system.
you
The
it's a
old,
slave.
like the Greek slaves were owned by other Greeks and were Greek. And then they would enslave foreigners too. Romans did the same thing. Persians did the same thing. There was a brief period with Cyrus the Great who ended slavery, but as soon as he was gone, they brought it back again. Japan ended slavery in 1590. They were the first one to end it and keep it out, with continuity. I think they have the longest span. There have been cultures that temporarily got rid of it, but it returned. That happened in France briefly. And then it was, the British ended slavery and went around policing it and forced other people to do it. So, but really, free markets kind of ended slavery because they made wage slavery more cost efficient. There's no giant, I mean, hey, it doesn't matter. It's the right thing for the wrong reason type of thing. It benefited everybody to get rid of slavery. And so you don't have a huge initial capital investment. There's reasons you can look at it and go, on paper, it's better to pay people low wages and not pay for their housing and food and guaranteed rights than it is to own them. And it just wasn't sustainable. But slavery was practiced all over the world. Most of the time it was within the same race. It was just
Correct.
people, the poor were the slaves. And it's also on a spectrum. So you have like chattel slavery, you have serfdom, you have like grad students or indentured servants, like H-1B visa holder, whatever. It's a gradual thing. Sweatshop labor, like you're paid, but are you? Script pay that lasted up until the 1920s, and then until you had things like the Blair Mountain Rebellion and stuff going against that in the United States. It's been slowly phased out, but it affected all people. This little niche of the Caribbean and the United States, where whites own black or Native Americans own blacks, because that happened as well, was that fast compared to the long history of slavery and Africans enslaving other Africans, and Africans sold the slaves to the Americans, all that. It is not the product of race, and it is not the product of racism. People have always had slaves because it's free labor. That's why they have. They don't care. Racism could be an additional problem or something they use to justify the slaves, but they never really needed it before, when they enslaved the poor or the tenant slaves they would have. Like the Irish were quasi-slave. Well, they were straight up slaves too, but for a long time, the tenant system and a lot of the people forced to Australia, when it became a greater return on investment to have sheep because of the wool you could sell than to have tenants, they just kept raising the rate until it was impossible to pay and made debtor slaves and sent them off because it was easier to get the sheep than people. It's messed up, but it's always been about greed, and they don't give a damn if you look like them, if you're the same race as them, whatever. You're low class. That's all they have to say. Slavs were enslaved, and Eastern Europeans were enslaved. Everybody got enslaved. There were a few places in the New World that didn't have slavery. Some Indians had slaves, some did not. And that's probably because the ratio of resources to population. There were parts where there was such abundance it just wasn't necessary. There's nothing like, Indians are better or something. It's the situation.
Right, we've been doing this for an hour and 54 minutes. Time flies. I love you to bits, mate. Thank you for your wisdom. Really appreciate everything. I'd be grateful if you can stay online after I close the live space. I need to talk to you.
Go grab those links that I can remember for you.
Go and get all the links, and then I can put them into the Twitter feed. Send them to me in Telegram as usual. All and we're going to call it quits. Ryan, I really appreciate your time, mate. Boycott Israel, people.
Anti-Neocon.com. Anti-Neocon.com. You can get your Boycott Israel coffee. This one's weathered. I've already had all the coffee in it. I just keep the packages. Drink it. This will make it taste better too. Your John McCain burning in hell mug.
Right. Let's leave it there, mate. Thank you very much for your time. Okay. I'm going to end it. Thank you very much for you guys watching. And HIP 13, I'm so sorry. I've only just seen all your comments in, what's it called, in our YouTube. Thank you guys. Ryan, stay on the line, please.